Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and this was not an easy one to watch. We have the Challenger disaster lost tapes. Now, this documentary, it's 44 minutes long. It came out in 2016, and it's the kind of thing that, they put out these every so often. It comes in a cycle. When I did a search on IMDb for Challenger disaster, there's at least probably a half dozen different ones, and let me go back. In fact, let me see. There's just the Challenger disaster in 2013, Challenger disaster in 2019. I don't know if that's a film or if it's a documentary. There's a Challenger disaster, The Untold Story, and then of course this one in 2016, the lost tapes. There's a temptation for, I think, a lot of these things to become exploitative, or to be analytical, and to just really sort of tear into the why and how and interview people and give all the answers and be high-minded about it and just get in the way of the story. And of course, there's also, for good intentions and reasons and everything else, and there's also, like I said, exploitative in the sense of just going to try to be overly dramatic, overly dramatize, and turn this into a reality show, shock drama kind of thing, and that's not what this is, thankfully. But it doesn't make it any easier to watch. It makes it harder to watch, because what you get in this is the actual footage prior to the event, weeks, months beforehand, or even a year beforehand, of the selection process that went. It's not dry, boring kind of things, but you get to see who Krista McAuliffe primarily. And I'll give you the reason why we're focusing on her, because there were 7 people on that shuttle, all of them who lost their lives in 1986, January 28th, 1986, at 11:39 a.m. There's 7 people who died in that thing, but there's a reason why they put so much focus on Krista McAuliffe, a school teacher. She was the first private citizen ever to go into space, or with the intention of going into space, to literally teach classes from space to children. This is something that we've accomplished since. We've had private citizens go up. We've had people just teach things from space, broadcast special moments. This has become so commonplace and so average that we don't even pay attention anymore. We haven't paid attention to space shuttle launches. Well, we don't have them anymore, really. We have rocket launches, SpaceX and NASA. We've had plenty of those things. We don't put out space shuttles anymore, not this type anyway. The last disaster, I remember where I was in 2003. I was in Florida. I had seen it launch days or weeks before. I forget even how long they were in space. I remember watching it from outside my office where I worked, just miles away from the coast, at Cape Canaveral, where it launched. And I remember being in Target when it was about to land, and they had TVs on. They usually, put promos and stuff like that, big, CRT televisions, not flat screens like they have now. I remember somebody had turned it to the landing, because, hey, it's Florida, it's a shuttle landing. These people have family there. And I watched the disaster in Target, and it was devastating then. And that was the only time that we really just sort of woke up and go, this kind of stuff is still happening. It's kind of stuff can still happen. We're not invulnerable. And we don't live in a Star Trek, Star Wars world where, we all just walk around the hulls of spaceships and have conversations and meaningful dialogue, and there's gravity, and we wear neat uniforms and talk to Wookiees, or, that this stuff doesn't happen. These people risk their lives in tremendous ways to pioneer, to go forward, to explore beyond what we know, what we know is commonplace, to discover and to learn and to teach. So what we have here with Kristen McAuliffe is that she wasn't just somebody who spent her entire life growing up to be an astronaut, or basically going to the school and the training and everything else, almost to the degree of being a military person in a sense. Even though NASA is not a military branch, it's still it's a way of life. She was one of more than 10,000 people who submitted an application to join the space program during Reagan's presidency, and in 1985, she and a backup were selected. Another woman, her name, why don't I remember her name? Barbara Morgan. They went through all the training. They went through all the things. But, I mean, what made this special is that they were one of us. They were just a normal person. She was a school teacher in Concord, New Hampshire. Kids, teachers, family rooting for her. And this is not to diminish the rest of the lives that were lost on that at all. But because this is this is a big promotional opportunity. Let's put an average person up there in space. Somebody who can give back as well and show kids, to be an inspiration to kids, to go, bam, I want to be like that lady. I can do this. This is something I can do. She went through all the training after selection that was necessary, and she had a whole plan for herself. And you get to see that footage. The only time it breaks from the actual raw footage, edited, it's edited, but from the footage of the preparation process and everything else, is when there's a ticker of text that goes along to just sort of put things in context that say, okay, this is happening when, this is what's happening, and this is where it's happening. There's no narrator. You get to see the buildup of footage, just chronicling the whole process, and you get to see and hear the things that she says, see and hear the things that her family says, her husband, 2 small children, her friends, her colleagues, and everything else, people excited and preparing for this moment. And you get to see the footage, the news footage, the NASA footage of crowds from that day. And that's easily the most heartbreaking, just knowing what's going to happen. If you were alive, as I was during that time, and aware what was going on, let's just say you're going to need a big bucks. It's I didn't even expect it to affect me the way it did, because it's just like those things, where were you kind of things, like 9/11, the assassin of JFK, or Martin Luther King Jr. Those kind of things, you you don't know. You see them, they blindside you. And I remember where I was 9/11. I remember where I was when the Challenger exploded. And yeah, I was in high school, and it was just, I was walking with some friends in an empty hallway for the most part. I think it was during class. I think I had a free period or something like that, and one of the classrooms we walked by was empty except for the teacher, who had the TV on. He was watching the footage. He was watching the launch at 11:38 a.m. that morning on January 28th. And we just happened to be walking by, just not being loud or anything else, not being not too obnoxious, but he called us back to the room. Get in here. Get in here. And we walked back. We thought we were in trouble, but it was not anything like that, and we looked at the television, and it had already happened. We were completely oblivious to this. Other classrooms, which had class in session at the time, were more than likely already watching it. He just didn't happen to have a class at the moment. Like, I don't know if it was just after lunch or prior to lunch or whatever it was, but other classes. I know that every single, or at least most of the classrooms, and we didn't have flat screen TVs. These were sometimes wheeled in on dollies. Some were mounted on the walls permanently, and they were just these big honking CRT, like tube televisions that were not even this big, okay? And we all witnessed it together. I couldn't tell you who my friends are that I was with at that moment. If you see this and it was you, say so. But yeah, it was devastating, and it was all anybody could talk about for a long time. And what you get in this is the footage leading up to it, the excitement, the total obliviousness, we don't expect it, of the crowds at the launch site in Cape Canaveral. Her parents are there in the stands. Her siblings are there in the stands. There are children everywhere, crowds of people. Florida, Cape Canaveral, Florida people know what it's like to watch a launch. Some have been to all of them, some have been to some of them. You're lucky to get, you know what, even if, if you know. And up in Cape Canaveral, not up in Concord, New Hampshire, her entire school, sitting in an assembly, celebrating, preparing for their teacher to be going into space. They're just blowing their horns and just, prepping. They're just watching. There's a not very big television. Again, not probably bigger than this, but there's rows of kids in an auditorium all looking at a tiny television broadcasting this. Our space technology was only slightly better than our television technology at the time, probably. By the way, if you ever want to know what the kind of technology that went into getting some of our earliest rockets, manned rockets, into space, this has more technology in it than any of the rockets at that time. Probably even more than the rocket in which she and her crew perished. So we get to the point where everything goes wrong, and I see this as I'm flipping by, as this IMDb page. This is burned into our memories. When we see this cloud, people who were there at that time, when we see that cloud formation, that exhaust formation, we know exactly what that is. We know exactly where we were, if we were old enough to remember such a thing. What you see, and that image, that cloud, that's burned into your brain, and it's it's heartbreaking. So what you get to do when you watch this is you get to see it happen in somewhat real time. It's not minute by minute kind of thing, but you get to see the build up. You see the cheering, the excitement, just everybody, and then they don't show it at the beginning. They do a little bit of the build up at the beginning, and then they go back in time to build up to the story. And toward the end, you get to see the chaos unfold slowly as realization dawns upon everybody in those crowds, and it's devastating. And George H.W. Bush, the senior Bush, he was vice president at the time. You get to see, he's the one who kind of was there to pick her and to be chosen. And he is the first one to visit NASA and speak about the tragedy. And President Reagan at the time was ready to give the State of the Union address that night after a successful launch. And that, I don't think it happened the way it happened. I don't remember that, whether any of that happened, but he did give one of his more notable speeches about breaking the surely bonds of earth and breaking that kind of thing. It's his speechwriters pretty much nailed it, but we don't remember his speech and his reaction, the reaction of the heads of state, so much as the reactions of her family, her friends, her students at that time. And you get to be there. This thing gets you there. And maybe if you weren't there, if you don't remember it, if you don't care, it's probably not going to affect you. But if you were there, this is going to bring it home real fast. So I don't normally talk this long about a documentary. I didn't expect to talk this long. I didn't think I would have enough energy to even talk about this. But I highly recommend it. It's, to put that lightly, if it's something that you remember as a kid growing up, put things in perspective and bring back those memories, as sad and tragic and horrifying as they were. This is not going to be a feel-good moment. There's no happy ending at this. Technically, there is a happy ending because the space program continued on, followed up with Discovery. And there have been triumphs and tragedies ever since, but all these triumphs do not come without tragedies, unfortunately. And that's the way it's been throughout history, especially American history. No, not especially, just including American history. There's a lot of bad stuff that happened, usually by our own hands, but in this case, it was an O-ring that was damaged. Again, there is no strange fanfare or analysis or talking heads trying to tear it apart or anything else. You get as much closure as you can really get, but it's for something like this, and there's not a whole lot, but it's something that's worth checking out. It's worth checking out. This is history, and history is worth knowing. So, yeah, that's my long way of saying watch this. Hopefully Disney Plus hasn't taken it away with everything else. So let's pick tomorrow's episode.
227.
227. Isn't that a show? Yeah, it was a show. 227. Okay, well, I don't know what this is, but I have a feeling it might be similar to the thing that's below it. It's another documentary. There's a lot of documentaries on here. Hey, I've been picking stuff that's not documentaries for the last week or so, but excuse me. We're going to be watching something simply called Jane from 2017. And is it a documentary just like the one below it about Jane Goodall? I don't know. How many other famous Janes do you know? No, not Jane's Addiction. That doesn't count. So next we're going to watch Jane 2017 on the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Bye.